Hi, I'm Dr. Randy Hurst. I'm a psychologist doing these videos to try to give people a basic background in helping deal with anxiety, addictions, alcoholism, other kinds of things that may be causing them problems in their lives. For this video, I'm going to go back to something I started using 45 years ago or more in the alcohol and drug treatment field, but I've used it in a little different way with many other types of people as well. It's been extremely helpful. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how this idea of higher power versus God came up within the 12-step programs, then focus on what I like about it, but also especially what I don't like about the higher power. I'm going to talk about some things that I'll refer to God and Christian church, but I don't mean this to be at all religious. It can be. The way it depends on how a person defines what they believe in, what they have faith in. So first, let me just give you some of the background. The idea of higher power came from, well, as a reaction to, let's say, the first couple members of AA being very involved with the Oxford groups, which was a Christian group. And they pulled away from it, not because they didn't believe, but because they just wanted to help people that were like them. And in their early talking together with other early members, they were intending to use the Bible. They were intending to refer to God. Until one of the earliest members, who was agnostic, said, wait a minute, what about people who are like me? Are not sure what to believe, or people who are outright atheists, or people who believe in something else. And so they didn't want to exclude other people, but they wanted to use the idea of, my life is out of control, I need to turn it over to something other than me, because when it's me, I get into trouble. And so the alternative they came up with for this was the higher power. And they left it very open. The higher power as you understand it. I think they said him, I'm not sure, but I'll say it. So what is that? It's very hard because it's undefined, except as you understand it. So, and then in my experience, working in inpatient and outpatient treatment for years, I saw many people use a God concept, but particularly a kind of God concept that struck me as that we teach children. In fact, I had a nun who had been a supervisor of mine, and she said that many people have this very young concept of God because they're taken to church by their parents, and they're told God knows everything. God can see everything. God controls everything. Pray to God and He'll answer your prayers. And she struggled with this, and she said this isn't the church's way of believing it, but it's what young kids can understand. It's very concrete. And then later they pull away from the church, and then even later they have kids, and they might come back to church and teach what kids understand. And sometimes don't get beyond this very rewarding and punishing God that she likened to an Old Testament God. So I struggled because as people would believe, I have this faith, I have this belief, things are going to turn out now. If they have reversals, if they have something bad happen, as I've seen a lot in my career, people of faith can pull away because something terrible happened. And they stop believing because their belief was rooted in the idea that I believe so good things will happen. And this just isn't a good faith grounding anyway. A book years ago called When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner that's excellent for exploring this idea. Look at it, I think you would, if this is something that you've struggled with, I think it would be good. So if people lose their faith, if they lose that sense of grounding, it can be very bad for somebody that's got an addiction or a pattern that's become a real problem for them. It sets up for falling back into the old ways just out of discouragement. So I attack the idea that faith makes things right and bad things won't happen unless the faith isn't strong enough. There's too many problems with that. I propose, now this is going to be weird, I propose the higher power really doesn't do anything. In fact, I got myself into a big bunch of trouble again. Oh, wow. Yeah. 48 years ago, when I was on the board for a crisis center. And one of the ladies that I was giving a presentation to about what crisis centers do and don't do and how they are supportive, but they help people explore the answers they might already have inside. And this woman said, well, I believe in God, and that's all I need. And I said, well, that's great, but God doesn't answer you back. And that's the way that we're like. Crisis counselors are like God. We don't give answers. Oh, she said, no, God talks to me. And that's problematic. I think most people don't see that as in a direct God talking to me way. But going back, I see the higher power as not doing anything. This is kind of the problem, maybe, in what I propose to people. It's anathema to some people. But it really fits with what the Bible says for people that have that faith background. In the Old Testament, God punished and rewarded. In the New Testament, things were changed. Some people refer to this as the New Covenant. God said, this is my son, do what he would have you do. The judgment will be in the end. But it didn't say this outright, but the way it was taught to me as a kid was God was out of the punishing business now. You have the responsibility to follow through, to act, to do the right things, and follow the teachings of Jesus. Love your neighbor, do unto others what you would want them to do to you, and don't do things that you would not want them to do. The golden rule. So this way of doing it means that faith doesn't fix things, except to the extent that you follow through and do. And even then, it doesn't prevent bad things from happening necessarily. It's kind of, in an odd way, it's kind of like the karma concept. If you do well, do right things, it's more likely that things will come back to you in good ways. But it's not a guarantee. Anyway, let's go back to my alternative. I refer to an alternative, higher power, as what I say is a steady guide. And that's really what faith should be, is a guide of what to do that's right. But we have to do it. We have to be the ones that follow through. And the real key here is the steadiness. It doesn't change depending on how we feel. If we're mad or sad or stressed, it doesn't flip-flop all over and change our choices. It's a steadiness where we step back and go, okay, what is the right thing? Because I want to, what is the right thing to do? Take that deep breath that I've talked about in other things and slow down and pick the one that fits the values you want to be about now. That if you have children, you would hope that it would make your children feel proud of you. Or a parent that's important to you, be proud of you. This becomes the steadiness and the guide for what you're to do. But still, do we step back, stop, think, and look at what that is as one issue? And then if we know what it is, do we do it? And in the beginning of changing a major lifestyle, it can be really, really hard because it may not be the way you've done things in the past. If in the past you have spent when you wanted to spend, drank what you wanted to drink, get angry and explode if you felt like it. Things that would damage your relationships with others. That's the thing to try to pull away from by stepping back from those gut reactions, those feeling reactions, and engage the human or the real feelings that are influenced by the steady guide or a faith or whatever it would be. So, is God needed in this process? No. There are many atheists, agnostics that have very ethical, moral lives that focus on what's the right thing. There's a lot. To have a Christian faith can be very good that way as well. Especially a New Testament faith, where it really is about the positive, the caring, the following through even in hard circumstances kinds of situations. So what would be the hard things in your case? For the alcoholic, it would be to not start to drink as a way of reacting when you're alone, when you're stressed, when you're sad. Those are, depending on what the triggers were for the alcoholic. For the eater, for the gambler, there's triggers for each of these people. How do you pull back and do the thing that you know you want to become more of? What if you don't have a faith in God and you don't have a good sense of what that steady guide would be? Maybe you have a parent, for me a grandparent, a coach, a teacher, a friend, a sponsor, somebody that you can look at in your past or in your present that you want to be more of what they are. Do the things they did. Find out what they did. If you know them well, find out what they, look back at what they've done in the past. If you don't know them well, ask them, what did you do to get here, to get to this place? And pull back and follow through with that steady guide in whatever form you call it. You can call it, I don't care if a person calls it a higher power. I don't care if they call it God. The key that's important to me is the steadiness that is separate from one's gut emotions, gut reactions, old history, separate from those old patterns. Because if you're going to wire in new patterns, you have to do the new patterns long enough that they have some power over the old patterns. Because those old patterns stay. They're kind of tucked away. And if you've heard me talk about HALT, don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed in general. Those are the times that it's easy to slip back into the old reactions. So how do you stop, slow, what's the thing to do here, and follow through with the new you? It gets better later. Look at the waves video. You'll see that it can be very hard in the beginning, but pick your values. Pick what you believe in, what you want to be about. One of the things I use sometimes is an obituary idea. Pick how you would want people to be able to write about you when you're gone. That can be your guide. Okay, think about it. Hope this helps. See you later.